I remember there being a time when having access to high-speed internet was sort of an exclusive privilege. For those of you who might recall, back then, the only way to access the internet was through dial-up connection. Anyone who has used dial-up connection before is very familiar with the loud, screechy sound effect it makes when connecting online. In fact, it was probably the first most distinctive sound effect that the second you hear it, you knew right away what it was and where it's from. And this is not counting the game sound effects that you probably remembered, such as the Mario coins and the Mario jumps. For me back then, I don't think the internet was a thing, but computers most certainly were, especially when it came to CD-ROMs and playing games on it, along with the games on a computer built in, such as Solitaire, Minesweeper, Free Cell, and Pinball. But when it came to the internet, it was mostly the exclusive domain of my dad. He had his own personal computer, and I believe it was the only computer in the house. That meant he was the only one with access to the internet for the most part. I remember the times that when I wanted to use the internet, my dad was using it and say that he was using it for homework purposes. What those homework purposes were, I'm not really sure, but that was probably the way he chose to describe his usage of the internet. One of the things that he used the internet for was to do online transactions on Citibank.com, something I always distinctly remembered. And when he was finished, that was when he would turn over control of his computer and internet to me or my sisters. Since his computer was password protected, I couldn't use the computer and go online anytime I wanted. I think it was until we switched over from dial-up to high-speed internet when my dad would finally add more computers into my house. We had 2 or 3 set up after having high-speed internet, compared to when it was just my dad's dial-up connection. And if there was a specific point of reference when I switched over from dial-up to high speed, it was probably around the early 2000s in elementary school, maybe 4th or 5th grade, that my dad got our family high-speed internet. It was also this time that my dad brought home the PS1 and some video games, and suddenly the internet became a whole new world and important resource for me. I'm having a difficult time trying to remember what it was that I used the internet for back when I only had dial-up connection. But with high-speed internet, that's a whole different story. I used the internet for gaming-related sites like GameSpot.com, GameFAQs.com, and looking up cheat codes and tips and tricks for games. That was probably my main use of the internet back then. But when it was not that, I also used it to look up Flash sites where I could play Flash games. Some of those being sites like Cartoon Network and Miniclip. And lastly, Wikipedia was not a thing back then, so I used the Yahoo search engine before Google was a thing if I wanted to look up on a specific thing like definitions of words, news, or information on TV shows, like episode summaries and descriptions of, say, a plot and the characters. But speaking of resource, anyone remember when going to a library was a thing? It was for me back in elementary school and middle school, but now with the internet hosting so much data and information online, going to a library is no longer a thing. Most people these days also have access to high-speed internet, so it's no longer really an exclusive privilege. Man, how times have changed. But no matter how fond and nostalgic people were of the 90s, the fact is, no one ever wants to go back to dial-up connection. It is a relic of the past, and it's definitely best that it stays that way. Unless you can't afford internet for financial reasons, in which case maybe dial-up is the next best thing. But yeah, that was what it was like for me back then when it came to computers and the internet. Now these days I use it to play games on Facebook, go on YouTube, and of course do my commentaries and video uploads. Fun stuff, fun stuff. That's the end of this gameplay and commentary. Hope you enjoyed it, and Insanity is out.